there, everybody? Hope you're having a great Wednesday so far. Josh Ruger here in studio with the latest on Hurricane Milton, which just made landfall a few moments ago along the west coast of Florida near Siesta Key, which is just off to the north of Sarasota. So it's not really completely inland at this time, but it did make official landfall about 15 minutes ago. And we're here with an update on the impacts that Milton could cause as it surges off to the north and east, and what we're looking at as well as it moves throughout the overnight hours tonight into early tomorrow morning. So hope everybody's having a great start to your Wednesday. Let's get right to the information that you want to know about Milton. A very impressive hurricane on satellite radar. You can see a lot of that rain, though, on the northern side of the storm. Now, there's been a lot of wind shear that Milton has interacted with over the last several hours, and that's why you don't really see a well-defined eye there on satellite radar. But nonetheless, still a powerful Category 3 storm that has caused several tornadoes in a lot of locations in eastern Florida between Fort Pierce, Melbourne. We've been watching this all day long. You've probably seen some of these tornadoes, which have been huge in these areas, and it's all because of these rain bands on the eastern side of Milton. Now, obviously, a lot of those rain bands are starting to move off to the north and east, but let's look at those local storm reports to get an idea of the tornadoes. And there you go right there. Look at all those tornado reports along the east side of Florida there near the Fort Pierce area along Interstate 95. We've seen some reports of damage as well south of Fort Pierce along the interstate as well, but some more tornado reports as well just off to the west of there, and a lot of different locations. These rain bands have caused some major issues throughout the day in eastern parts of Florida, which is why we always talk about with hurricanes too. A lot of times we get caught up in the landfall, the impacts that are going to be seen from storm surge, destructive winds, all those things. But it's also very important to remember that a hurricane is very large, and the eastern side of that storm, we always talk about it all the time on the news. The eastern side of hurricanes are the most dangerous part. And you can see why it is right there. Those very heavy rain bands out ahead of the main piece of energy, those can cause tornado potential, and those can cause copious amounts of rain as well, which is why we've seen several flash flood warnings in those same locations. Now, we surge back to the west here. We take a look at Milton. You can see it's making landfall right now. It made landfall again near Siesta Key just a few moments ago, which is just off to the north of Sarasota. Made landfall as a Category 3 storm with 120-mile-per-hour winds, surging off to the east-northeast at this time. And remember yesterday, if you're watching our newscast, we were anticipating maybe the system slowing down just a little bit before it made landfall. That wasn't the case. Remember, it's kind of gone back and forth in terms of that landfall. But notice that we have a flash flood warning with a considerable tag attached to it near the Tampa area. Now, Tampa, it's dodging a bullet right now. I do think there will be a lot of damage in Tampa, but the eye, or the eastern part of the storm, is actually going to be just off to the south of Tampa. So that means the storm surge may not be as bad near the Tampa area. However, Sarasota, Port Charlotte, Fort Myers, these areas right here are really going to be under the gun where the most significant storm surge is going to be seen. And that's because on the southeastern side of the storm, you get a lot of the ocean water surging eastward, and that's why a lot of that storm surge is going to be most prevalent near Fort Myers, Port Charlotte, and Sarasota. These areas right here are going to be really under the gun as we move throughout the next few hours. But Tampa itself experiencing some very strong winds, very destructive winds at this time as the eye wall lifts off to the east-northeast. But in terms of storm surge, I think that won't be as pressing of an issue in those areas. There's still going to be storm surge, obviously, but in terms of catastrophic storm surge, I don't think that's going to be the case in Tampa at this time. Obviously, when we wake up tomorrow morning, we're going to be able to see the full extent of what this hurricane has caused in those locations. But we're going to take a little wider view right now. Take a look at that IR satellite. Now, this is what I was talking about when it comes to that wind shear. Notice how this storm kind of looks a little bit more disorganized as it lifts off to the east-northeast. Now, disorganization doesn't necessarily mean that it's very weak, but it has weakened quite a bit. Remember, over the last several days, we've seen this as a Category 5 storm, one of the strongest storms on record in the Atlantic Basin, but we were anticipating it to weaken as it surged off to the east-northeast because there is a lot of wind shear that's located along the west coast of Florida right now. And sure enough, that's the case. That's a blessing. Definitely happy that it's been weakening quite a bit, but still, you can see those colder cloud tops moving in along the Interstate 75 corridor right there, that little pink shaded color. That's where that eye is, and that's where that eye wall is as well. And that's where the strongest winds are located within major hurricane Milton. So we're going to be watching all this very closely over the next several hours. Let's take a look at the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. So it has lost a little bit in terms of that wind in the latest update. This was at 8:00 p.m. So this was right after landfall for Milton. I'm going to take myself out of the way here so you can see the full extent of that. 115 mile per hour winds. That's sustained winds, remember, and then gust up to 150 miles per hour. So hurricanes are determined by their sustained wind speed. There's a lot of misinformation out there, I think, on categories of storms. There's no such thing as a Category 6 storm. So if you've seen anybody talking about Category 6 or anything like that, they're full of malarkey, because with hurricanes, we get to a Category 5 that's 157 mile per hour winds or greater. And after that, we just stick with a Category 5 for the rest of the way. There's no such thing as Category 6. So obviously, Milton, no longer a Category 5. But I just wanted to point that out, because I know there's a lot of folks out there that are probably like, okay, I've seen this about Milton. Is it going to become No, none of that. There's no such thing as a Category 6 storm. So I wanted to make that clear on a live stream, because I really haven't had time to do that on air or online, really, because there's just been a ton of misinformation about hurricanes over the last several weeks, in my opinion. So wanted to mention that, wanted to get that out of the way. Back to the task at hand. Sarasota is about to experience the full brunt of that eye wall right there. As a matter of fact, we're seeing it right now on Mega Doppler, so we'll show that in just a few moments. But the latest update has this storm 5 miles north of Sarasota, Florida, moving off to the east-northeast at 15 miles per hour. Pressure's at 956 millibars, moving off to the north and east. We're going to get that next to Biosphere at 10:00 p.m. But let's look at the latest track of the storm. Let's see how Milton kind of evolves as we go throughout the overnight hours tonight. So it will weaken very quickly. It already is weakening. From here on out, this storm is going to continue to weaken. So I want to make that clear. As it moves through Florida, the wind speeds are going to be going down. In fact, it should be a Category 1 storm by the time we get to about 1 o'clock Central Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Of course, that's in the morning, overnight tonight into early tomorrow. So that's the good news. As it moves across Florida, it is going to weaken. Bad news is it's also dropping a lot of rainfall, especially on the northern side of that storm, right? So Orlando, really going to be under the gun. Thankfully, this storm is a very quick mover, right? So unlike Helene, which meandered, right, over the Carolinas a few weeks ago, caused all that horrific, catastrophic flooding, that's not necessarily going to be the case with Milton, because this storm is going to be actually to the east of Florida. At least the center of the storm is going to be east of Florida by the time we get to Thursday afternoon at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Time, and then continue to weaken or maintain its tropical depression strength as it moves across the Atlantic. So that's the good news when it comes to Milton. It's not going to be sticking around for a long time. Once it gets east of Florida, the impacts will be over. That's the good news. Bad news is obviously a lot of storm surge to attend to. And again, as I mentioned, the greatest storm surge with Milton is going to be south of Tampa. So Tampa is still going to get storm surge. There's no doubt about that. But the greatest impacts from storm surge are going to be felt on the southeastern side of that storm. So remember, I talked about Sarasota. I talked about Fort Myers. If you're in between both of those areas, that's where the most significant storm surge is going to be observed from the storm. Remember, the southeastern part of the storm, that's what we're looking at right now. So Port Charlotte could see over 12 feet of storm surge. Venice could also see over 12 feet of storm surge. Inglewood, we go a little bit farther south here. You could see Pine Island Center as well, up to 12 feet of storm surge. So again, southeastern part of the storm, most dangerous part. That's where the most significant storm surge is observed. And yes, storm surge is the most dangerous part of the hurricane. So hopefully all those folks that live there took those evacuation orders very, very seriously. I know they likely did, especially with Helene fresh on many people's minds. So praying for those folks right now for sure, and hoping that everything's going to turn out okay. Of course, it did weaken right before it made landfall, which is great, but we're just hoping that continued as it moved off to the northeast. Again, we're not really going to know the full extent of the damage until early tomorrow morning. Now, we surge a little bit farther to the north. Again, there's still going to be storm surge in Tampa. No doubt about that. Up to 9 feet of storm surge possible around Tampa and towards the St. Petersburg area. I know a lot of folks have interest there, a lot of friends and family who live there. The greatest impacts are southeast of Tampa. However, there's still going to be major impacts. So up to 9 feet of storm surge, that's still pretty significant in these locations, especially in Tampa, which is prone to flooding. So still going to see some storm surge in Tampa, but it won't be as bad as areas farther south and east. If we surge a little bit farther south here, you could see some more significant storm surge possible near the Naples area, Marco Island as well, which got hammered as well by a hurricane last year. And then we go back up to the north and east here towards Melbourne. You can see up to 6 feet of storm surge possible on the eastern side, Daytona Beach as well, Palm Coast, and Jacksonville. All these areas could see up to 6 feet of storm surge. So that's the latest details on the storm surge. We're going to be watching it very, very closely. We're keeping an eye on all those cameras that are still up south of Tampa right now, but obviously a lot of them are going down with that loss of power. I'm going to show this later for that's Northwest Arkansas, whether I'll show that in just a minute. I wanted to get to the rainfall totals that we're anticipating with Milton as we move throughout the rest of this event. Again, this has been adjusted by the Weather Prediction Center. Significant rainfall possible, especially, again, on the north side of the storm. The north side of the storm is really where most of the rainfall is going to be observed, especially with the storm getting sheared apart on the south side. So about 7 to 10 inches of rain possible along the I-4 corridor. Orlando definitely under the gun for some significant flooding as we go throughout the overnight hours tonight and early tomorrow morning. Surging a little bit farther to the east here up towards Daytona Beach. Just talked about Daytona Beach. Could see some pretty significant rainfall totals, but a very sharp cutoff as well in terms of those rainfall totals. Again, the storm definitely a little bit more favorable for the rainfall on the northern side of the storm. Sarasota not getting nearly as much rain as Tampa right now, and it makes sense because the storm is running to a lot of wind shear. So northern side of the storm, that's where most of the rain is going to fall in a line from Tampa to Orlando to Daytona Beach, where about 7 to 10 inches of rain could fall as we move throughout the next 24 hours or so, which, is pretty significant because, these same areas have seen quite a bit of rainfall from some tropical energy over the last several days as well. So flooding potential definitely could be on the increase in these locations. So going to watch that very, very closely in that area along the Interstate 75 and Interstate 4 corridors. Now, I see some people commenting right now. Make sure if you got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. We've got quite a few folks on here. This is the part of kind of this live stream where I can answer questions for everybody, kind of look into some specific details as well. But overall, Milton right now causing significant storm surge near Sarasota. And at this point, we're just going to have to kind of wait and see, because tomorrow morning is really when we're going to see the full extent of what exactly Milton has done. How bad will Daytona Super Speedway be hit? That's just sent in from Michael. So, Michael, good question right there, because we were just talking about Daytona Beach and the Daytona Super Speedway as well. I mean, a lot of rainfall for sure. The good news is for the eastern side of Florida, the storm surge is not going to be as significant because it's going to be moving across central Florida, and then it's going to continue to weaken. So it will be weakening as it moves across Florida throughout the overnight hours tonight to early tomorrow morning, but significant rainfall is expected in that area. Let's see here. When we visited Fort Myers and Sarasota, I remarked how low those areas were. And, Will, we just talked about that. That's kind of the issue with this hurricane is that, and what I'm most concerned about is, wobbled a little bit farther south, which is great for Tampa. That's for sure. But Sarasota, Fort Myers, those areas right there could see some more significant storm surge. But Mike Irwin is right about this. It could have been a whole lot worse. It could have been a whole lot worse if that system maintained its strength across the Atlantic Basin, which we didn't expect it to do. We didn't expect it to maintain its strength. But if it did, it could have caused some catastrophic impacts, and it still could cause some destructive impacts as well. But it definitely has weakened quite a bit before landfall. That's a blessing. Still a major hurricane at landfall with 120 mile per hour sustained winds. But as Mike said, it could have been a whole lot worse. And we're hoping that remains the case as it surges off to the north and east. Mr. Carroll asking, did Captain Dan make it? I saw that guy. I don't know if that guy is actually still out there or not. I've been hearing conflicting information. Some people are saying he's still out there. Some people said the police got him out of there. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Captain Dan right now, Mr. Carroll, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I'm sure hoping he's not out there. Kinder Carroll says he is staying. So I guess we're going to see what happened to him. I have some opinions on that. I won't share that on the live stream, but hopefully Captain Dan's okay out there. Hopefully Captain Dan's okay. Absolutely. Thank you for the prayers now down in Mount Dora, Florida. Okay. Thank you so much, Christina, or Chris. Yeah, Christina. I think that's your name. Yeah, absolutely. I think, here's the deal. I mean, look, I know everybody has different beliefs and stuff like that. I believe in the power of prayer and stuff like that. I'm always, praying for folks and always hoping for the best in these situations. And so I'm going to continue to do that as we move throughout the next several hours. Obviously, we're just getting started as landfalls already occurred, and there's going to be more impacts a little bit further down the road. But I'm praying. So far, the prayers have worked to weaken the hurricane, so that's what I'm going to continue to do. And hopefully all those folks down there are gonna be okay. They took those evacuation orders seriously. They were able to get to safety, able to get to safe places, and then as we wake up tomorrow morning, we'll get to see the full extent of what exactly went down with this. But I really appreciate you checking in, Christina. I hope everything is going good where you are. Let's see here. Trace is trying to find an update on Lieutenant Dan or Captain Dan out there. Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with them. That's for sure. Yes. Yep. Rebuke the hurricane. Yes. Get it out of there. We want that to move on out as quickly as possible. That's a good thing. I need to make this clear. I need to make this clear right now on this live stream. This is not going to be like Helene. Helene, it interacted with another system. Both of those systems interacted with each other. The hurricane itself and that trough of low pressure that was supposed to impact Northwest Arkansas, but really impacted the East Coast. They both interacted with each other, and that's what brought the catastrophic rainfall impacts to a large part of the Deep South. And we talked about that. If you watch the morning show, and if you watch Dan as well in the evenings, you saw us both talking about the potential for catastrophic flooding. And I know we always get caught up in the landfall of the storm and the impacts that it causes, but really the big story with that hurricane was always going to be the rain. And it turned out to be the case, unfortunately, for much of Western North Carolina, South Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, those areas. Horrific what happened there. But with Milton, landfall is basically the story with this one. Yes, there's going to be copious amounts of rain, but it's going to move out really quick. And because of that, we're not going to see as much destructive flooding in those areas, in portions of Central Florida right there. Let's see here. Just got back from Sarasota on Sunday. I work in Sarasota. All my people are in the eye right now. Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm hoping they're okay. We're sending prayers their way right now. And yes, the eye is moving over Sarasota. In fact, if we go to Heil Heating Cooling Mega Doppler, you can see that right now. There it is. And just look how this storm is structured. I mean, again, the shear really killed the southern side of that storm, right? So there's not a whole lot of rain going on here. However, there is, I can guarantee you, storm surge going on right now along the west coast of Florida in these areas. Boca Grande, Pineland, these areas are getting hammered right now. Even though there's no rain there, right? There's not a whole lot of rain being observed. They are getting hammered in those spots. So hoping things can start dying down pretty soon. Sarasota, of course, getting battered by the eye wall right now. Very strong winds. Haven't noticed a lot of lightning around the eye wall, which is a good sign because that means the storm was weakening as it moved in. If you see lightning in the top side of the storm, right? If you see it on the northern side of the storm wrapping around the eye, that means the storm went under either an eye wall replacement cycle or it's very, very strong as it's making landfall. We didn't see that with Milton, which means it was on the weakening trend as it pushed through. So that's good right there. That's great. But man, Tampa getting hammered with very heavy rainfall right now. Very heavy rain in St. Petersburg as well. Clearwater. All these locations that we knew were going to get some pretty significant rainfall totals are getting it at this time. But thankfully, just on the northern side of the storm for those areas. So that is the good news in those locations. I'm getting a question about Tarpon Springs. So I think that's a little bit to the north of Clearwater. Let's see here. I'm trying to. Oh, there it is right there. Tarpon Springs. Okay. So Cheryl, you're asking about Tarpon Springs. So it's on the northern side of the storm, which is good. It's on the northern side of the storm, which is great because that means the storm surge is not going to be as significant in these locations. However, still very heavy rainfall, still destructive winds possible in this area here, but not as bad as what's going on a little bit farther south. So hopefully that puts your mind at ease. It's on the weakening trend. It's going to continue to weaken as it surges off to the north and east. Trace, do you know anything about the 20th? I've seen videos forecasting another hurricane heading for Texas. Do we know if that's true or just fear mongering? So, Trace, here's the deal. There is a piece of energy right now in the tropics that we're watching very closely. Is that going to become a hurricane? Is that going to impact portions of Texas? It's too far out to determine that. It's way too far out to determine that. Yes, I think it's fear mongering right now. It's something that we're watching, that we're keeping an eye on. Nothing is set in stone at this time. It could just as easily fizzle out. It could just as easily move out of the area. So hopefully that puts your mind at ease. As we get closer, we'll fine-tune those details and keep an eye on everything. But right now, what you need to know is that there is a tropical wave that's currently going on that we're watching that has our interest. But in terms of set in stone, hitting Texas, doing this, doing that, that right there is fear-mongering. And we'll continue to watch it very, very closely across the country and let you know about those details right there. We also got Josh Marshall.
What's
right
up?
Here he is. Josh Marshall, our wonderful director right here.
How's it going, y'all?
Yes, making the magic happen. Yes, making the magic happen.
I was just listening.
Yeah, but man, this storm, I mean, I was just talking about it right now. Weekend right before it made landfall.
Nice.
That's a blessing right there.
Awesome.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
And,
I got a lot of friends in West Palm from when I worked there.
Oh wow, yes, I got some big time tornadoes and stuff like that in those
areas. I had
areas.
to make sure they were all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody's good. So
absolutely, that's good to hear. And
Floridians of all people, I'd say, are the strongest out there.
Yeah.
They can deal with it.
Yeah, I gotta go through a lot of events. Those pop-up storms as well during the summer too. That's a whole other thing as well. Yeah, but I'll say this, when Josh, you were just talking about how you had friends in Florida and stuff like that. I mean, we got a lot of viewers in Arkansas that have friends, family in Florida as well, which is why we're on right now covering this event and everything. But really happy to hear about that information. Again, Josh Marshall right here, director, KNWA Fox 24, the man, the myth, the legend, the GOAT, here. The GOAT, the greatest of all time. The greatest of all time. Yes. Thank you so much, Josh. Josh does an absolutely fantastic job for us. He is the guy who makes the magic happen for sure. Just now noticed on this flash flood warning here. I think we've got a flash flood warning now with is this a flash flood emergency? Yes. So here's something that I got to mention because I know we have interest in St. Petersburg and Tampa. There is a flash flood emergency in effect right now. Now, flash flood emergencies are quite rare. 10 to 14 inches of rain have fallen in these locations over the last several hours, and flash flooding is already occurring. So I want to pull this up. So give me just a few moments here. I'm going to pull this up so we can take a look at that flash flood emergency. It's very rare to see that. You see that little pink box right here? That's a flash flood emergency, and that does include St. Petersburg and Tampa. So even though the storm surge is not going to be as bad in these locations, there's certainly going to be some impacts from flooding near the Tampa area. So let's zoom in on that. I'm going to go here to watches and warnings. We're going to take a look at that flash flood emergency that was just now issued. So look at this. So notice this flash flood warning right here. See how it has that catastrophic tag attached to it? So that flash flood emergency will expire tomorrow morning at 2:30 a.m. Eastern time. So several hours ago with that flash flood emergency, very heavy rainfall going on along Interstate 275, Interstate 75 near and around the Tampa area. So, definitely praying for those folks that are there in Tampa right now, and hoping that this starts to wind down a little bit in these locations. Again, not as bad in terms of the storm surge, but on that northern side of the storm, especially in a hurricane that's getting sheared apart, you tend to see a lot of that rain pool in on the northern side of the storm. So, definitely hoping that everything is okay there, praying for those folks there. The good news is it's a quick-moving hurricane, right? It's a quick-moving hurricane, so it's going to be moving out quickly. That's the good news. And just hoping that some peace and comfort can be brought to those people right now that are still in Tampa, working very hard as well to keep people safe and keep people protected there. Let's see here. Looking at some more folks. Oh, my dad lives just north of the path maybe 30 miles north of the pass. So, Mandy, where does your dad live? Maybe we can take a closer look and see what's going on at his location, and we can take a closer look at what's going on there. Let's see. Helen caused destruction in Siesta. Now Milton made landfall there. Prayers for all. Yes, that's right. And Siesta, it was the area where it made landfall, right, just off to the west of Sarasota. And Siesta, man, it gets hit pretty hard by these hurricanes. That's for sure. Looks like meteorologist Peyton Langford joining in right now. We're about to wrap things up here, Peyton. But flash flood emergency just now issued for Tampa and St. Petersburg.
Yeah,
as well.
Camera's still up.
Yep.
From WFLA. In the 7 o'clock, I was seeing power flashes from that camera in Tampa.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of that too on a lot of those.
I got the camera.
Yep. So we can show this camera now. We got to mention that this is from WFLA, our sister station in Tampa, right?
Yep.
This is in Tampa, so we just have to mention that real quick.
3.
So it's on weather 3.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a live look in Tampa Bay right now, and you can see all the rain that's going on. Now, here's the deal, and I mentioned this, Peyton. The good news for Tampa is it's on the northern side of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
So the storm surge is not as significant in Tampa and St. Petersburg. However, the flooding threat is very real. I mean, it's almost as bad as storm surge in a lot of ways. But you could see blinding rain going on.
And there's about, there's 2 lanes and a median there, so I'd probably say it's about 8 to 10 inches.
Yeah. Well, it said 10 to 15 inches of rain have fallen over the last several hours.
Yeah.
In those locations based on the flash flood warning. Okay, I got Mandy asking about Mount Dora, so I'm going to go to that right now here on Mega Doppler. So, talking about Mount Dora, Mandy, here's the deal about Mount Dora. It's inland, which is great, but still going to have some strong winds and still going to have very heavy rainfall with the potential for flooding. So, your dad's going to be safe from storm surge, obviously. Don't have to worry about the most dangerous part of a hurricane, but significant winds and significant flooding possible. I'm going to go back to this camera. I mean, you got to look at these squalls that are coming through. That's the thing about hurricanes that always fascinate me. You see these like rain squalls come in. It's like the wind dies down for a minute and then bam, another squall comes through. And look at this.
Stop signs.
Stop signs. Yep. They are on their last legs right now. So again, this is in Tampa, WFLA. Thank you for letting us use this camera.
Highly respected meteorologist.
Yes.
At the WFLA.
Yes. And they're holding down the fort right now too. There, I know. They have to stay in there. And there's a lot of other folks, first responders and people at the hospital. As we had a few folks mention that they had some family that were at a hospital in Tampa, staying overnight, praying. Again, the good news is, Peyton, is and we expected this to happen, but I'm glad it came to fruition because this storm has kind of exceeded expectations in terms of the strength that it had in the Atlantic. If you go on the forecast, but it did weaken before it made landfall. Made landfall as a Category 3 storm with 120 mile per hour sustained winds near near Siesta.
Siesta Key.
Yep.
Which is near Sarasota.
Yep, which is near Sarasota. So definitely glad that it was on the weakening trend as it moved in, but gonna have to keep watching this very closely. Again, this is different from Helene. Got to make it clear one more time. This is not like Helene. We're not talking about a system that meanders over the eastern coast of the United States for days and drops copious amount of rain. The good news is that we've got this big high pressure that's in control right now in the midsection of the country. So that's steering any systems away from Milton. So we're not going to have a similar setup to that. This is a much different type of storm. And the reason why I want to mention that is because I know a lot of folks are probably thinking about Helene right now, thinking, okay, is this going to be the same thing? Catastrophic, horrific images that we saw. I don't think that's going to be the case with Milton. Personally. Do we have the Skyway Bridge in St. Pete? Do we have a camera of that? I don't know if we do or not, unfortunately.
No, I could try to go to the FDOT cams. They might be up.
Yeah. But, they might be down too because of what's going on. I mean, those cameras, I'm assuming, are probably
they're not the greatest.
Yeah. Spent way too many hours in Siesta Key bars way back when, says Mandy.
Right.
There you go. Siesta Key. That's the way to go. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna drop off this graphic here.
You can go back on it. I moved over now.
Okay. Just reported 1.2 million without power in Florida already. Wow. Yeah. That's a report right there. So already 1.2 million without power and plenty more to come. Did that camera freeze? Oh, no, it's back up.
Just trying to open Dan's 5 million tabs that automatically open.
Yeah, that's right.
I just close them out.
Yeah, Val, praying for each and every one that is affected. That we are doing the same thing here in studio. I've been praying for the last several days. I believe in it. I'm firm in that. I think it's a powerful thing to do, and I'm hoping that everybody who's still there stays safe and is able to find safety and is able to find comfort and peace, and hopefully too their homes and their businesses and everything that they love is spared from the storm. That's what we're all hoping for right now. They're saying that Captain Dan's still in the boat right now.
Oh, Lieutenant Dan.
Lieutenant Dan.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're getting reports that he is still in his boat.
See, cameras are down.
I'm getting conflicting reports because some people are saying that he's not in the boat. But yeah, it looks like he's still in the boat. I've gotten multiple people that says he's still in the boat. So I believe what folks are saying right now. Okay, so somebody was asking what's the current strength. So we'll get back to that right here. This is the current update at 8 o'clock p.m., the current advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Category 3 storm with 115 mile per hour sustained winds, gust up to 150 miles per hour, moving off to the east-northeast at 15 miles per hour, pressure at 956 millibars. And here's the deal. Here's what you need to know about this hurricane from here on out. It will only get weaker. It will no longer get stronger, right? It's not going to get any stronger than what it is right now. So that's the blessing. That's the good news. As it moves inland, it will continue to weaken. However, it's still going to cause impacts in terms of flooding. It still could cause a little bit of storm surge on the eastern side of Florida as well towards Daytona Beach, but it's not going to be as significant as what we're seeing right now. So it's going to weaken as we move throughout the next several hours. But it did make landfall as a Category 3 storm.
Skyway Bridge question, they don't have FDOT, does not have live streaming cameras on the Skyway Bridge. They have plenty of still images, but no live cameras.
No live cameras. Okay.
We should grab something in Sarasota if they're up.
Yeah. I hope they're still up. I mean, that's where the strongest winds are, though. Probably. Ooh. What's that? Is that storm surge?
Yeah.
That might be some crazy flooding. Hopefully it pulls up. Yeah. A lot of these cameras are going to be down because, you've got power outages that are going on. You've got very strong winds, very heavy rain. Okay. Get another report right here. My cousin lives near Tampa. Sustained winds 60 to 70, gust to 100. He said 40 minutes ago. So that's on the northern side of the storm. Yeah. So theoretically speaking, that should be a little bit weaker than what's going on near Sarasota and areas farther south. That's a good report right there. Thank you so much for sending that in. Really appreciate that. Very good to know about that too as it's making landfall. I hope Mickey Mouse stays safe. Praying for everyone in this Giants path. That is one thing about this storm. It is massive.
Yeah,
it's a huge storm, but it's kind of getting sheared apart right now, and you can literally see that if you just look at the radar image of it. A lot of times when these hurricanes are getting kind of cut up by the shear, the southern side of the storm has basically no rainfall, and you're seeing that right here with Milton. It's all on the northern side. I mean, but you talk about a cutoff between like really heavy rainfall and little to no rainfall. I mean, just look at Tampa, and then look at Sarasota. I mean, Sarasota is not even going to get nearly as much rain as Tampa, but Sarasota is getting the more significant storm surge. And I'm guaranteeing you right now, Sarasota, areas farther south towards Fort Myers, Inglewood, they are getting hit with storm surge. They may not be getting hit with rain, but they're getting hit with some pretty significant storm surge right now. So that's what we're looking at right now in terms of the impacts on the storm. But Orlando probably going to get some big time flooding. We're going to have to watch that very closely, and hopefully things can start winding down there as well. Okay, I'm getting a question about is that Ocala? I don't know how to say that.
Maybe Osala.
Osala. I know where it is. It's right here. Osala. I'm going to say Osala. So Osala's well north. So it's well north of the most significant impacts. Osala will get some heavy rainfall throughout this event, but it will not see obviously destructive winds. Probably tropical storm force winds, I would say, on the northern side of the storm right there. But in terms of significant catastrophic impacts, I don't think that's going to be the case there in Osala. You're also asking about Leesburg. That's a little bit farther south. So there's Leesburg right there. And Leesburg will have stronger winds. So you're asking about Osala. Osala, maybe not as many impact. Leesburg, probably some pretty heavy rainfall. I would still say tropical storm force winds in Leesburg. Not as pressing as what's going on farther south, but still the potential for some pretty strong winds in Leesburg as well. So that's what's going on there in both of those locations. But thank you so much for that question right there. Hurricane as strong as expected, or did it weaken pretty significantly? Now here's the deal: we expected it to weaken. That was always the forecast. We always expected this to weaken to Category 3 storm before landfall, and that did pan out. The one thing that was, and I'll say this, the one thing that was unexpected, at least in terms of the intensity forecast, was we didn't have it as a Category 5 storm. At least the National Hurricane Center didn't have it as a Category 5 storm. But I will say this, right? I will say this: forecasting intensity is the hardest part of a hurricane.
For sure.
No doubt about it. It's like the models cannot really pick up on that very well. But at the same time, you also have to kind of realize climatology and stuff like that. This is peak hurricane season. This is when the storms get the strongest. This is when you can see that rapid intensification process. I mean, it went from like a Category 1 to a Category 5 in like a matter of hours.
10 hours.
I mean, it was unbelievable. And it was one of the strongest storms in the history of the Atlantic Basin. So it did, meet some records. Thankfully, it didn't meet those records at landfall. And that's what we were always expecting. So it's kind of a yes and no. Was the hurricane as strong as expected, or did it weaken pretty significantly? Yes, to both.
Yeah.
Because it's as strong as expected, and it did weaken pretty significantly right before landfall. So that's what we're looking at right there. Let's see here. Any other questions around here? I think we're going to be wrapping this up pretty soon because we got to get ready for our next newscast here in Arkansas. I know a lot of folks are probably watching in
the
Florida
birds
right
that were
now.
trapped in the eye.
Look at that. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me go to Megadoppler. So what are you looking at right here, Peyton?
Correlation coefficient.
Yep.
And looking at this big kind of blue circle here. A lot of the they're not the ratio of these things that are the radar's picking up is not symmetrical, which is not a raindrop. And if we would go to the
something. There we go. Yeah.
You can see the orange correlates to BI, that's biological scatter. So it's a lot of birds that were trapped in the eye. It just comes over land.
Yep.
Something that's pretty neat.
It's pretty
to
neat.
think about.
And notice how it's on the eastern side too.
Yeah.
It's the eastern side. It's the eastern side, the southeastern quadrant.
This is inside the eye.
Yes. The southeastern side of the storm is the most dangerous part. It's that southeast quadrant.
All these birds trapped in here. Oh man.
Yeah. They're not having a good time. That's for sure.
Maybe they are because they're in the eye.
Yeah. Well, that's true. They're stuck. They're stuck. They can't leave. All right. I think we need to wrap this up because we got to get ready to rock and roll. And yes, that outer band was pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
I need to look at the historical context behind some of those tornadoes. Because I mean, we're talking not just the amount, but like the strength and like how like big they were and everything. I mean, it was pretty unbelievable.
Likely EF2, possibly EF3s.
I know. I mean, you were seeing considerable tags attached to multiple tornadoes. Like I've seen considerable tags attached before to some like tropical systems in terms of tornadoes, but like not like in a string. Like you had like multiple considerable tags on those tornadoes. All right. We've got to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for joining in. We had over 1,500 people in right now. If you're watching from Florida, if you're watching from anywhere along the East Coast, we really appreciate you joining in and trusting us with your safety and with the latest information as well. Of course, if you are in Northwest Arkansas, we're going to have the latest Northwest Arkansas forecast coming up on Fox 24 News at 9 o'clock, KNWA News at 10. Zach Gilday will be in early tomorrow morning. I'm sure they're going to be talking about the aftermath because the
Yeah.
sun will be coming up. So we're actually going to get some views of that. So join Zach Gilday tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. at KNWA, as well as Fox 24 News at 7 o'clock. But we're going to continue to pray here for everybody that's currently impacted by these storms in Florida. Hope everybody has a blessed rest of the night, and we will talk to you in the next live stream. Have a good one.